All right, hello. My name is Dr. Cheryl Meyer, and we're reading Evelyn Underhill. Oh, I forgot I could go to the post office and get the original. I think, or one of the ones. We're reading The Nature and Development of Spiritual Consciousness. It's called Mysticism, and it was written in 1910 by Evelyn Underhill. And usually I am outside in some beautiful nature setting, so you can watch dynamic things behind me. But it got too dark tonight, so I didn't want to go out by the coyotes. Anyway, we are at the beginning. This is a beautiful, beautiful, amazing book, and I didn't see it online anywhere, anyone reading it, so I'm just reading it for us. And this is Princess Leia. Hopefully, she'll sit on something and you'll get to watch something while I'm just reading. All right. I think I'll have something about Evelyn Underhill in the description on my YouTube channel. Follow me there if you're not following me there already, and like and subscribe and all of that stuff, so you get and turn on the notifications so you know when these are going to be uploaded, or you might be interested in some of my other videos. I teach all the time, but I read a book called The New Man by Maurice Nicole, and 2 books by George MacDonald. They're fairy stories. C.S. Lewis said every one of his books was, he quoted George MacDonald either directly or indirectly. And C.S. Lewis also was influenced by Evelyn Underhill. And behind me, it's a whole shelf of C.S. Lewis books. I have studied him and his influences. Over there, George MacDonald and Tolkien, JRR Tolkien. Anyway, Evelyn Underhill wrote to C.S. Lewis, and she told him his idea of God was too tame. So then Aslan was created, you know. Anyway, that's what I heard. I can't remember if I read that or not. But I heard it from someone I've known for a long time. Okay, so here we are. We're in chapter 1, the point of departure. We're almost finished with chapter 1. Maybe we can finish all of chapter 2 today. I just, it was really cold when I was reading last time, and it had already been an hour, so I had to leave. Chapter 2 is called Mysticism and Vitalism. So that will be in a few pages from now, because I read the preface as well. You can start here. All right, I'll just start so that the people in the playlist can just start hearing this. In answer to the why of the bewildered and eternal child in us, philosophy, though always ready to postulate the unknown if she can, is bound to reply only, nesoi. I know I read this part before, but Nescio. Anyway, because there's an exclamation point. In spite of all her, I don't know what language that is. Maybe French. It's in Fondement de la Connaissance Mystique. In spite of all her busy map making, she cannot reach the goal which she points out to us. Cannot explain the curious conditions under which we imagine that we know, cannot even divide with a sure hand the subject and object of thought. Science, whose business is with phenomenon, and I ought to tell you, I mean, if you're just starting right now, don't be discouraged. Mysticism, I need to write it on the side of my book here. Mysticism is the study of our spiritual consciousness. And Evelyn Underhill talks about how all of us are searching for union with the divine. And she goes through philosophy and science and spirituality to show how mystics and people before have mapped out this road for us. And if we're not daring enough to do it ourselves, then we can't make fun of them. We ought not to make fun of them. We ought to listen to the maps that they have laid out for us and to know it's possible for each of us, you know, to whatever calling we are here. If that's not your calling, then let's learn from the mystics what that is. And so you can fulfill your calling, but also know and feel and experience how they fulfilled their calling. And get the knowledge of them. She talks of them as pioneers, you know, they're pioneers. All right. Science, whose business is with phenomena and our knowledge of them, though she too is an idealist at heart, has been accustomed to explain that all our ideas and instincts, the pictured world that we take so seriously, the oddly limited and illusory nature of our experience, appear to minister to one great end, the preservation of life, and consequent fulfillment of that highly mystical hypothesis, the cosmic idea. Each perception, she assures us, serves a useful purpose in this evolutionary scheme, a scheme, by the way, which has been invented, we know not why, by the human mind, and imposed upon an obedient universe. By vision, hearing, smell, and touch, says science, we find our way about, are warned of danger, obtain our food. The male perceives beauty in the female in order that the species may be propagated. It is true that this primitive instinct has given birth to higher and purer emotions, but those too fulfill a social purpose and are not so useless as they seem. Leia. Men must eat to live. Therefore, many foods give us agreeable sensations. If he overeats, he dies. Therefore, indigestion is an unpleasant pain. Certain facts, of which too keen a perception would act detrimentally to the life force, are for most men impossible of realization. The uncertainty of life, the decay of the body, the vanity of all things under the sun. When we are in good health, we all feel very real, solid, and permanent, and this is of all our illusions the most ridiculous, and also the most obviously useful from the point of view of the efficiency and preservation of the race. But when we look closer, we see that this brisk generalization does not cover all the ground, not even the little tract of ground of which our senses make us free. Indeed, it is more remarkable for its omissions than for its inclusions. Jacques has well said that from the moment in which man is no longer content to devise things useful for his existence under the exclusive action of the will to live, the principle of physical evolution. I never let her out here, so she's exploring. Just a second. So she's talking about, let me lower this a little. She's talking about our senses. And so we talked about before, like the atoms. Atoms are like, you know, the solid part is this tiny, tiny part, and like 95%, I can't remember, but I loved chemistry. It was my only honors class. Is like 95% just, or 99% nothingness, like air or non-solid, you know? And so this may appear solid, right? It's a liquid, but, you know, this may appear solid. Your phone or whatever you're watching this may appear solid, but it's really very spacious. She'll talk more about it. And I talked about it some in the last video. Nothing can be so... From the moment in which man is no longer content to devise things useful for his existence under the exclusive action of the will to live, the principle of physical evolution has been violated. Nothing can be more certain than that man is not so content. He has been called by utilitarian philosophers a tool-making animal, the highest praise they knew how to bestow. More surely, he is a vision-making animal, a creature of perverse and unpractical ideals, dominated by dreams no less than by appetites. Dreams which can only be justified upon the theory that he moves towards some other goal than that of physical perfection or intellectual supremacy, is controlled by some higher and more vital reality than that of the determinists. We are driven to the conclusion that if the theory of evolution is to include or explain the facts of artistic and spiritual experience, and it cannot be accepted by any serious thinker if these great tracts of consciousness remain outside its range. See, where does evolution, talk about these things? It must be rebuilt on a mental rather than a physical basis. Even the most ordinary human life includes in its range fundamental experiences, violent and unforgettable sensations, forced on us, as it were, against our will, for which science finds it hard to account. These experiences and sensations, and the hours of exalted emotion which they bring with them, often recognized by us as the greatest, most significant hours of our lives, fulfill no office in relation to her pet, quote, functions of nutrition and reproduction. Like, they're not there for evolutionary reasons, these great experiences that we have on the mountaintops or whatever, It is true that they are far-reaching in their effects on character, but they do little to nothing to assist that character in its struggle for physical life. To the unprejudiced eye, many of them seem hopelessly out of place in a universe constructed on strictly physiochemical lines. They look almost as though nature, left to herself, tended to contradict her own beautifully logical laws. Their presence, more and large place, which they fill in the human world of appearance, is a puzzling circumstance for deterministic philosophers, who can only escape from the dilemma here presented to them by calling these things illusions and dignifying their own more manageable illusions with the title of facts. Amongst the more intractable of these groups of perceptions and experiences are those which we connect with religion, with pain, and with beauty. All three, for those selves which are capable of receiving their messages, possess a mysterious authority far in excess of those feelings, arguments, or appearances which they may happen to contradict. All three, remember what she said, religion and pain and beauty. I think I'm getting to a part I haven't read yet. I only read the first chapter, and then I was like, oh, I have to read this for the people on my YouTube channel and Instagram and all my other social media. So you get it the same time that I'm getting it. Well, I mean, soon after I upload these. I have an order which I upload these. Excuse me. I just went on my walk and I want my vitamins. All right. All three. Wait, Leia. No, don't eat something out here. Come here. All three, were the universe of naturalists true, would be absurd. All three have been treated with the reverence due to vital matters. Here. I'll try to, anyway. Okay. All three have ever been treated with reverence due to vital matters by the best minds of the race. Yeah, I see. Okay. So I'll just read that part again. Amongst the more intractable of these groups of perceptions and experiences are those which we connect with religion, with pain, and with beauty. All three, for those selves which are capable of receiving their messages, possess a mysterious authority far in excess of those feelings, arguments, or appearances which they may happen to contradict. All three, were the universe of the naturalist true, would be absurd. All three have ever been treated with the reverence due to vital matters by the best minds of the race. A. I need not point out the hopelessly irrational character of all great religions, which rest, one and all, on a primary assumption that can never be intellectually demonstrated. I need not point out the hopelessly irrational character of all great religions, which rest, one and all, on a primary assumption that can never be intellectually demonstrated, much less proved. The assumption that the suprasensible... Oh, my son was asking me about this today. He's a teenager, one of them. He was asking me about this. I ought to recommend this book. I don't know if he'll listen to me read it online. The assumption that the suprasensible is somehow important and real, and is intimately connected with the life of man. This fact has been incessantly dwelt upon by their critics, and has provoked many a misplaced exercise of ingenuity on the part of their intelligent friends. Yet religion, emphasizing and pushing to extremes that general dependence on faith, which we saw to be an inevitable condition of our lives, is one of the most universal and ineradicable functions of men. And this, although it constantly acts detrimentally to the interest of his merely physical existence, opposes the exclusive action of the will to live, except in so far as that will aspires to eternal life. Opposes the she's quoting again. It opposes that exclusive action of the will to live, except so far as the will aspires to eternal life. Strictly utilitarian, almost logical in the savage, religion becomes more and more transcendental with the upward progress of the race. It begins as black magic, it ends as pure love. Why did the cosmic idea elaborate this religious instinct, if the construction put upon its intentions by the determinist be true? B. She'll explain herself more. If you're not understanding some of this, she'll explain it. We've got a whole book for her to explain it. Consider again the whole group of phenomena which are known as, quote, the problem of suffering. And C.S. Lewis wrote the book, The Problem of Pain. And now I have that back there. Because he wanted to address that. But anyway, consider again the whole group of phenomena which are known as the problem of suffering, the mental anguish and physical pain which appear to be the inevitable result of the steady operation of, quote, natural law, and its voluntary assistance, the cruelty, greed, and injustice of mankind. Here, it is true, the naturalists seem, at first sight, to make a little headway, and can point to some amongst the cruder forms of suffering, which are clearly useful to the race, punishing us for past follies, spurring to new efforts, warning against future infringements of law. But he forgets the many others which refuse to be resumed under this simple formula, forgets to explain how it is that the cosmic idea involves the long torments of the incurable, the tortures of the innocent, the deep anguish of the bereaved, the existence of so many gratuitously agonized forms of death. He forgets, too, the strange fact that man's capacity for suffering tends to increase in depth and subtlety with the increase of culture and civilization, ignores the still more mysterious, perhaps most significant circumstances that the highest types have accepted it eagerly and willingly, have found in pain the grave but kindly teacher of immortal secrets, the conferrer of liberty, even the initiator into amazing joys. Those who, here, I'll just do this. Sit up on that, let's see. Oh well. She's like, nah, I'll just sit back here. Those who, oh wow. All right, I'm back. Those who, quote, explain suffering as a result of nature's immense fecundity, a byproduct of that overcrowding and stress through which the fittest tend to survive, forget that even were this demonstration valid and complete, it would leave the real problem untouched. The question is not whence come these conditions which provoke in the self the experiences called sorrow, anxiety, pain, but why do these conditions hurt the self? The pain is mental, a little chloroform, and though the conditions continue unabated, the suffering is gone. They had invented chloroform by then, you know. Why does full consciousness always include the mysterious capacity for misery as well as for happiness, a capacity which seems at first sight to invalidate any conception of the absolute as beautiful and good? Why does evolution, as we ascend the ladder of life, foster, instead of diminishing the capacity for useless mental anguish, for long, dull torment, bitter grief? Foster, okay, why does evolution, as we ascend the ladder of life, foster instead of diminishing the capacity for useless mental anguish, for long, dull torment, bitter grief? Why, when so much lies outside our limited powers of perception, when so many of our own most vital functions are unperceived by consciousness, does suffering of some sort form an integral part of the experience of man? For utilitarian purposes, acute discomfort would be quite enough. The cosmic idea, she has that with capital C and I, you know, cosmic idea, as the determinists explain it, did not really need an apparatus which felt all the throes of cancer, the horrors of neurasthenia, the pangs of birth. Still less did it need the torments of impotent sympathy for other people's irremediable pain and dreadful power of feeling the world's woe. We are hopelessly oversensitized for the part science calls us to play. The science part of this. We are hopelessly oversensitized for the part science calls us to play. Pain, however we may look at it, indicates a profound disharmony between the sense world and the human self. It is to be vanquished. Either the disharmony must be resolved by a deliberate and careful adjustment of the self to the world of sense, or that self must turn from the sense world to some other with which it is in tune. Pessimists and optimists here join hands, but whilst the pessimist, resting in appearance, only sees nature red in tooth and claw, nature red in tooth and claw, red, the color red, offering him little hope of escape, the optimist thinks that pain and anguish, which may in their lower forms be life's harsh guides on the path of physical evolution, in their higher and apparently, quote, useless developments, are her leaders and teachers in the upper school of suprasensible reality. Suprasensible reality. He believes that they press the self towards another world, still, quote, natural for him, though supernatural for his antagonist, in which it will be more at home. Watching life, he sees in pain the complement of love, and it is inclined to call these the wings on which man's spirit can take flight towards the absolute. I was just explaining this to a client last night. We were talking about how pain, you know, you either face immense pain or it leads you sometimes when you're on a spiritual path, and we all are, you know, it will lead you to higher truths. Unless, I mean, if you're creating the pain, that will lead you to something as well, because you search and search for why you keep creating the same pain over and over again. But hence he can say with a Kempis, a Kempis. I know Thomas Kempis. Oh, Thomas A. Kempis. Okay, his book. Oh, here she has it. The Imitation of Christ. De Imitation Christi. It's in French and English. It's free as well. I have part of it on my channel, but just the part that my voice stream reader was reading, because I just wanted it read to me that night. But oh great, she speaks it in French. Maybe, hopefully she translates it. I have it on my phone right here, but Gloria in tribulation non est grave amanti. Let's see if she has a... All the healing arts from... No, okay. It's part 1, chapter 2, caption VI. Anyway, glory and tribulation. Non est grave amanti. I don't know what amanti is. Anyway, and needs not to speak of morbid folly when he sees the Christian saints run eagerly and merrily to the cross. I took Greek. I didn't take French. I lived in Montreal for a year, so I know some French, but I took Spanish and Greek. He calls suffering the, quote, gymnastic of eternity, the terrible initiative caress of God. Oh, like God is initiating you into a higher order of learning. And, you know, it's the kiss of God, the kiss of the divine. Recognizing in it a quality for which the disagreeable rearrangement of nerve molecules cannot account. Sometimes in the excess of his optimism, he puts to the test of practice this theory with all its implications. Refusing to be deluded by the pleasures of the sense world, he accepts instead of avoiding pain, and becomes an ascetic, a puzzling type for the convinced naturalist who, falling back upon contempt, that favorite resource of the frustrated reason, can only regard him as diseased. I had a conversation with someone today, my guitar teacher, who has a different philosophy than me. It's kind of like G.K. Chesterton and George Bernard Shaw. They had a relationship, and Bernard Shaw he's the guy that wrote Pygmalion or My Fair Lady. I think what he did is he kept saying that he was a Christian, and G.K. Chesterton kept saying, no, you are not, you know, but anyway, this guy, my guitar teacher today, was talking to me about certain things. Why are you holding yourself back in these certain areas? And I'm like, because, you know, and then I won't say what, you know, but then I'm like, why are you holding yourself back in this certain area? You know, but something that that's a good boundary to have in life. And he explained, and so I said, that's my same reason, you know, it's a good boundary. I know it's to be a good boundary to have in life, but the world of the naturalist says, no, you are creating pain for yourself, unnecessary pain, you know, and you don't have to do that. Anyway, so it just happened today. Pain then, which plunges like a sword through creation, leaving on the one side cringing and degraded animals, and on the other side heroes and saints, is one of those facts of universal experience, which are peculiar. The person I was talking about it says he's an atheist, so I'm not comparing him like Bernard Shaw and G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton's so brilliant. And so was Bernard Shaw. Like, we had an intelligent conversation for sure. But anyway, I'll keep going back with the story, the book. Pain then, which plunges like a sword through creation, leaving on the one side cringing and degraded animals, and on the other side, heroes and saints, is one of those facts of universal experience which are peculiarly, I can't say that for some reason right now, intractable from the point of view of a merely materialistic philosophy. Point C. From this same point of view, the existence of music and poetry, the qualities of beauty and of rhythm, the evoked sensations of awe, reverence, and rapture are almost as difficult to account for. The question why an apparent corrugation of the earth's surface called for convenience sake an Alp, like the Alps, coated with congealed water and perceived by us as a snowy peak, should produce in certain natures acute sensations of ecstasy and adoration, why the skylark's song should catch us up to heaven, and wonder and mystery speak to us alike in the little speedwell's darling blue and in the cadence of the wind, is a problem that seems to be merely absurd until it is seen to be insoluble. Here, Madam How and Lady Y are alike. Madam How and Lady Y are alike are silent. With all our busy seeking, we have not found the sorting house where loveliness is extracted from the flux of things. We know not why great poetry should move us to unspeakable emotion, or a stream of notes arranged in a peculiar sequence catch us up to heightened levels of vitality, nor can we guess how a passionate admiration for which we call best in art or letters can possibly contribute to the physical evolution of the race. Like I have a Van Gogh right here. How does that contribute to the evolution of our race? It's beauty. In spite of many lengthy disquisitions on aesthetics, beauty's secret is still her own. A shadowy companion, half seen, half guessed at, she keeps step with the upward march of life, and we receive her message and respond to it, not because we understand it, but because we must. Here it is that we approach the attitude of the self, that point of view which is loosely and generally called mystical. Here, instead of those broad, blind alleys which philosophy showed us, a certain type of mind has always discerned 3 straight and narrow ways going out towards the absolute, in religion, in pain, and in beauty. And not only in these, but in many other apparently useless peculiarities of the empirical world and of the perceiving consciousness. These persons insist that they recognize at least the fringe of the real. All right, I'm going to lower it even more. There. That way you get my all right. Down these 3 paths, as well as by many another secret way, they claim that news comes to the self concerning levels of reality which in their wholeness are inaccessible to the senses, worlds wondrous and immortal, whose existence is not conditioned by the, quote, given world, which those senses report. Beauty, says Hegel, Hegel, the philosopher, who, though he was no mystic, had a touch of that mystical intuition which no philosopher can afford to be without. He says, quote, beauty is merely the spiritual making itself known sensuously. Oh, that's beautiful. Beauty is merely the spiritual making itself known sensuously. In the good and beautiful, here's another quote, in the good, the beautiful, the true, says Rudolf Eucken, we see reality revealing its personal character. In the good, the beautiful, and true, we see reality with a capital R, revealing its personal character. They are parts of a coherent and substantial spiritual world. Here, some of the veils of that substantial world are stripped off. Reality peeps through and is recognized dimly or acutely by the imprisoned self. Jacques only develops this idea when he says, if the mind penetrates deeply into the facts of aesthetics, it will find more and more that these facts are based upon an ideal identity between the mind itself and things. At a certain point, the harmony becomes so complete and the finality so close that it gives us actual emotion. The beautiful then becomes the sublime, brief apparition by which the soul is caught up into the true mystic state and touches the absolute. It is scarcely possible to persist in this aesthetic perception without feeling lifted up by it above things and above ourselves, in an ontological vision which closely resembles the absolute of the mystics." End quote. It was of this underlying reality, this truth of things, that St. Augustine cried in a moment of lucid vision, "O beauty, so old and so new, too late have I loved thee." It is in this sense also that beauty is truth, truth beauty, and as regards the knowledge of ultimate things, which is possible to ordinary men. It may well be that, and she's quoting here, "This is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know." And then here's another quote. "O beauty," says Plato in an immortal passage, quote, "I repeat again that we saw her there shining in company with the celestial forms, and coming to earth we find her here too, shining in clearness through the clearest aperture of sense. For sight is the most piercing of our bodily senses, though not by that is wisdom seen. Her loveliness would have been transporting if there had been a visible image of her, and the other ideas, if they had visible counterparts, would be equally lovely. But this is the privilege of beauty, that being the loveliest, she is also the most palpable to sight." It's going on still, this quote from Plato. "Now, he who is not newly initiated or who has been corrupted does not easily rise out of this world to the sight of true beauty in the other. Ellipsis. But he whose initiation is recent and who has been the spectator of many glories in the other world is amazed when he sees anyone having a godlike face or form, which is the expression of divine beauty, and at first a shudder runs through him, and again the old awe steals over him." Just more reason not to be corrupt, Even that I could have used as an argument today, that corruption blinds you when you go down that path, And Jesus said something about let the blind lead the blind. You come and follow me, follow highest consciousness, highest love. And I always welcome all religions. That's why we're studying this, to understand. Most men in the course of their lives have known such platonic hours of initiation, whence the sense of beauty has risen from a pleasant feeling to a passion, and an element of strangeness and terror has been mingled with their joy. In those hours, the world has seemed charged with a new vitality, with a splendor which does not belong to it, but is poured through it, as light through a colored window, grace through a sacrament. From that perfect beauty which shines in company with the celestial forms. Wow, I was just meditating on that. Beyond the pale of appearance. She's quoting, quote, "shines in company with the celestial forms." I just was meditating for the past hour before this on Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. It says, those who have insight, those who have wisdom, those who seek after wisdom and have wisdom and insight shall shine like the brightness of the skies and the heavens. And those who lead others to righteousness, right wayness, the right way, and will shine like the firmament of the stars forever and ever. That's it. And I was talking to my son today about Buddha and how he followed the eightfold path of right way, right action, right occupation, right, all these different right words. And it was like Buddha came before the Christ. The word Buddha means awakened. And so I was contemplating and asking God, not just staying in mystery, that what was the Buddha showing people? And, he was showing right action before the Christ was coming. And he predicted the Christ, as far as what I heard from another mystic that's passed on now, that the Buddha predicted that the Christ would come when he came, Anyway, all truth is of God. Anyway, it says, beauty which shines in company with the celestial forms, beyond the pale of appearance. In such moods of heightened consciousness, each blade of grass seems fierce with meaning, and becomes a well of wondrous light, a, quote, little emerald set in the city of God. The seeing self is indeed an initiate thrust suddenly into the sanctuary of the mysteries, and feels the old awe and amazement with which man encounters the real. In such experiences, a new factor of the eternal calculus appears to be thrust in on us, a factor which no honest seeker for truth can afford to neglect, since, if it be dangerous to say that any two systems of knowledge are mutually exclusive, it is still more dangerous to give uncritical priority to any one system. We are bound then to examine this path to reality as closely and seriously as we should investigate the most neatly finished safety ladder of solid ash, which offered a salita al stel. I don't know what that means. But feel free, put in the comments if you speak French and know what she's saying. Why, after all, take as our standard a material world whose existence is affirmed by nothing more trustworthy than the sense impressions of normal men? These imperfect and easily cheated channels of communication. Why, after all, take as our standard a material world whose existence is affirmed by nothing more trustworthy than these sense impressions of, quote, normal men, those imperfect and easily cheated channels of communication? The mystics, those whose adventures of whom we spoke upon on the first page of this book, have always declared implicitly or explicitly their distrust in these channels of communication. They have never been deceived by phenomena, nor by the careful logic of the industrious intellect. One after another, with extraordinary unanimity, unanimous, anyway. They have rejected that appeal to the unreal world of appearance, which is the standard of sensible men, affirming that there is another way, another secret, by which the conscious self may reach the actuality which it seeks. Okay, the book she was quoting from Plato was Phaedrus. I was just reading that part of it the other day. Jowett's translation. She really wants a really good translation, so I'm just going to say that. Phaedrus, Phaedrus. The reference in the phrase, he whose initiation is recent, is to the rite of admission into the Orphic mysteries. It is believed by some authorities that the neophyte may have been cast into a hypnotic sleep by his initiator, and whilst in this condition, a vision of the glories of the other world suggested to him. So basically, when you first become a believer, let's say in Christianity, or you're first initiated, and you see these truths, I don't look at it like that necessarily of the person bringing you to it, maybe, but maybe you see a whole glimpse of the whole, as like you're looking at the sun through an opening. That opening just is heightened or really strong at that moment, and that's why people, even King David writes, clean my heart, O God, bring back to me the joy of your salvation, that beginning mystery of your salvation. Clean my heart, O God, make it ever new, all that kind of thing, Anyway, more complete in their grasp of experience than the votaries of intellect or of sense, they accept as central for life those spiritual messages which are mediated by religion, by beauty, and by pain, more reasonable than the rationalists, they find in that very hunger for reality, which is the mother of all metaphysics, an implicit proof that such reality exists, that there is something else, some final satisfaction beyond the ceaseless stream of sensation which besieges consciousness. See, C.S. Lewis, he had a photographic memory. I knew his, well, I had met his son I volunteered for the C.S. Lewis Foundation, so I met his son Douglas on different occasions. But he was saying that they would play this game where they'd pick up a book from his library and start reading, and C.S. Lewis would just go on page after page. And so I see this, what she's saying all right now is in his book, The Weight of Glory. You know, he's saying it in his own words, but it's very much what she's saying right here. Sehnswitz, the German word, I'm saying it wrong, but it's like this joy that you seek, this longing. It's sometimes like a sad nostalgia. I know the word in Portuguese, it's saudade. It's worth looking up, except they changed it on Wikipedia. It was so beautiful before. I wish I didn't know they would change it. But anyway, it's like when you go back to the song and you think it's the song that brought you that beauty and that love, you know, or you go back to that person, it's like it wasn't the song. It wasn't the poem. It came through them. It came through that person. I've talked about this in lots of my videos. It's like the love. The other day I heard a bishop teaching, and he was saying, you know, notice how in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, you know, God created the heavens and the earth, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, and there was light. He said, let there be light. And there was light. And then he created the sun and the luminaries after that. And so it's like, even the sun, it's like, it's a representation of this love. This light comes through that. And so it comes through other people, but we mistake it to be the form, and we chase after forms. We think, oh, when I had all this money, I was so happy. And it's like, no, you just had this expansiveness and this joy and this feeling like you could buy anything, but it was just the feeling. You know, it wasn't the money. It was, you know, because the love of money is the root of all evil. It's like, you're mistaken if you chase after money. It's the joy that you naturally are in your innermost being, as when you're connected to the divine, who's connected, you know, anyway. That's why when you're corrupt, it's hard to connect to that actual true beauty. And so that you can't see how other people are getting this mystic experience, you know. More complete in their grasp of experience than the votaries of intellect or of sense, they accept as central for life these spiritual messages which are mediated by religion, by beauty, and by pain. More reasonable than the rationalists, they find in that very hunger for reality, which is the mother of all metaphysics, an implicit proof that such a reality exists. Oh, that's what C.S. Lewis talked about. That there is something else, some final satisfaction beyond the ceaseless stream of sensation which besieges consciousness. And so I'll put my finger where that is, but he says, you know, that man has a hunger, you know, well, there's bread that we find that gives us, you know, satiation for that hunger. That we're thirsty, well, we find water, you know, and we find satiation for that. If we, that we have this desire for unity with the divine, to worship, to know beauty, to know God, you know, he said that desire shows us, it can intimate, we can have a knowing that there is something that fulfills that, you know. In that thou hast sought me, thou hast already found me, says the voice of absolute truth in their ears. That's a quote. In that thou hast sought me, thou hast already found me. That's in Royce, The World and the Individual, Volume 1. I think that's where the one is. maybe that's later on in this page. Maybe that's just a verse, or in that thou hast sought me. It sounds, in St. Augustine, it says, that he says we have a longing. Oh, C.S. says, if there's a longing in us which something in this world cannot fulfill, it must be a longing for something in another world, that just came to me. But Augustine says we have like a heart-shaped vacuum. Our hearts are restless, O God, until they find their rest in thee. I just read that. It's at the beginning of St. Augustine's Confessions, towards the beginning, not very far past it. Says the voice of absolute truth in their ears. This is the first doctrine of mysticism. Its next is that only insofar as the self is real can it hope to know reality, like to like, cor ad cor, loquitur, speaking, I think, loquitur. Upon the proposition implicit in these two laws, the whole claim and practice of the mystic life depends. Finite as we are, they say, and here they speak not for themselves but for the race, lost though we seem to be in the woods or in the wide air's wilderness, in this world of time and of chance, we have still, like the strayed animals or like the migrating birds, our homing instinct. We seek, that is a fact, we seek a city still out of sight. In the contrast with this goal, we live. But if this be so, then already we possess something of being, with a capital B, even in our finite seeking. For the readiness to seek is already something of an attainment, even if a poor one. Okay, that part is from Royce, the world and the individual. Further, in this seeking, we are not wholly dependent on that homing instinct. For some who have climbed to the hilltops, that city is not really out of sight. The mystics see it and report to us concerning it. Science and metaphysics may do their best and their worst, but these pathfinders of the spirit never falter in their statements concerning that independent spiritual world, which is the goal of a pilgrim man. They say that messages come to him from that spiritual world, that complete reality, which we call absolute, that we are not, after all, hermetically sealed from it. To all who will receive it, news comes from a world of absolute life, absolute beauty, absolute truth, beyond the bourne of time and place, news that most of us translate and inevitably distort in the process into the language of religion, of beauty, of love, or of pain. Of all those forms of life and thought with which humanity has fed its craving for truth, mysticism alone postulates, and in the persons of its great initiates, proves not only the existence of the absolute, but also this link, this possibility first of knowing, finally of attaining it. It denies that possible knowledge is to be limited to sense impressions, to A, sense impressions, B, to any process of intellection. It's not just your intellect. I've had so many strange and mysterious messages and experiences that were definitely, like, they weren't of my intellect. One time I was at Rumi's grave and I got this phrase in my heart, and I said, I was like, am I supposed to chase this thing or this person or this idea like this, or this rose? There was a rose too, like this. And I got in my heart, it said, more like a feather, less like a hawk. And that's so Rumi. That's not me. Like, I don't know how that came to me. I'm not going to define how that came to me, but I was at his grave and I know Rumi's writings, but I never read that. That's just Rumi, like in the moment, spontaneous. But I don't know how. I mean, in a way, we know Einstein said there's no such thing as time, as linear time. And so if God is above time, and Rumi had a guardian angel and I have a guardian angel, it can be like that. Or if the Holy Spirit wants to reveal it to me as a truth, who knows? Like, I'm not saying get into any kind of a cult. I wasn't chasing after anything. It surprised me, but I laughed because it wasn't of my intellect. and you can say whatever you want to explain that, but it happened. And I know it happened, and so much more happened. But I don't say it all because I don't put it all online. Anyway, I say a lot, though. I do say a lot. We're almost done with this chapter. To the unfolding of the content of normal consciousness, that's C. Such diagrams of experience, it says, are hopelessly incomplete. The mystics find the basis of their method not in logic, but in life, in the existence of a discoverable real, a spark of true being within the seeking subject, which can, in that ineffable experience, which they call the act of union, fuse itself with, and thus apprehend the reality of the sought object. In theological language, their theory of knowledge is that the spirit of man, itself essentially divine, see, we're made in the image and likeness of God, so we have divine capacities, and God gives us divine gifts, even if we use them for evil. So he says, she says, in Evelyn Underhill, she says, in theological language, their theory of knowledge is that the spirit of man, itself essentially divine, is capable of immediate communion with God, the one reality, capital O and capital R. She writes down in the footnote, the idea of divine union as man's true end is, of course, of great antiquity. Its first definite appearance in the religious consciousness of Europe seems to coincide with the establishment of the Orphic mysteries in Greece and southern Italy in the 6th century BC. C. Rode, R-O-H-D-E, Psyche, his book called Psyche, and Adam, the religious teachers of Greece. Interesting. Anyway, in mysticism, that love of truth, which we saw as the beginning of all philosophy, leaves the merely intellectual sphere and takes on the assured aspect of a personal passion. Where the philosopher guesses and argues, the mystic lives and looks and speaks. Consequently, the disconcerting language of first-hand experience, not the neat dialectic of the schools. Hence, while the absolute of the metaphysicians remains a diagram, impersonal and unattainable, the absolute of the mystic is lovable, attainable, alive. Oh, taste and see, they cry, in accents of astounding certainty and joy. Ours is an experimental science. We can but communicate our system, never its result. We come to you not as thinkers, but as doers. Leave your deep and absurd trust in the senses with their language of dot and dash, which may possibly report fact, but can never communicate personality. If philosophy has taught you anything, she has surely taught you the length of her tether and the impossibility of attaining to the doubtless admirable grazing land which lies beyond it. One after another, idealists have arisen who, straining frantically at their rope, have announced to the world their approaching liberty, only to be flung back at last into the little circle of sensation. But here we are, a small family, it is true, of mystics, yet one that refuses to die out, assuring you that we have slipped the knot and are free of those grazing grounds. This is evidence which you are bound to bring into account before you can add up the sum total of possible knowledge, for you will find it impossible to prove that the world as seen by the mystics, unimaginable, formless, dark, with excess of bright, is less real than that which is expounded by the youngest and most promising demonstrator of a physico-chemical universe. We will be quite candid with you. Examine us as much as you like, our machinery, our veracity, our results. We cannot promise that you shall see what we have seen, for here each man must adventure for himself. But we defy you to stigmatize our experiences as impossible or invalid. Is your world of experience so well and logically founded that you dare to make of it a standard? Philosophy tells you that it is founded on nothing better than the reports of your sensory apparatus and the traditional concepts of the race. Certainly, it is imperfect. Probably it is an illusion. In any event, it never touches the foundation of things. Whereas what the world, which truly knows nothing, calls mysticism, is the science of ultimates, the science of self-evident reality, which cannot be reasoned about, because it is the object of pure reason or perception. All right. All right, I wish you much love. Look, we're almost at chapter 2. It's going to be mysticism and vitalism. That'll be next.